Welcome to another deep dive, this time into the wisdom of Naval Ravikant. He's a legend in the startup and investment world. But what I find really fascinating about him is how he combines practical advice on making money with these really profound insights on, living a good life.
Yeah,
So for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with Naval, could you give us that quick rundown on who he is and what he's all about?
yeah, absolutely. Naval's story is really remarkable. I mean, he was born into poverty in New Delhi and immigrated to the U.S. when he was a kid
Oh, wow.
and went on to become like a wildly successful, tech entrepreneur and investor. He's backed companies like Twitter and Uber really early on. And he also founded AngelList, which is a platform that's really revolutionized startup fundraising.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think what really sets Neville apart is his unique perspective on, wealth and happiness. And his insights, he initially shared them on Twitter, and they resonated so deeply with people
Right.
that they were compiled into a book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, A Guide to Wealth and Happiness. And that's kind of what we're going to be diving into today.
That's right, yeah. And I have to admit, when I first came across Naval's work, one of the things that really struck me was his distinction between money and wealth. It's such a simple concept, yet it completely changes how you think about, building that financial security. So could you break that down for us a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So Naval argues that most people confuse money for wealth. Like they think they're one and the same.
Right.
Money, he says, is what you earn, trading your time for wages.
Yeah.
It's transactional. It covers your expenses, but it doesn't necessarily lead to lasting riches. Whereas wealth, that's about owning assets that generate income, even while you sleep, so to speak. So think of agassiz, investments, intellectual property, things that kind of work for you, even when you're not actively working.
Yeah, so it's not just about grinding away at a job, but it's about creating something that has the potential to grow beyond your direct effort. I can see how that would be a game changer, especially for people who feel kind of stuck in that traditional, 9 to 5.
Totally. And that kind of brings us to what I think is one of Naval's most um, compelling ideas, which is this concept of productizing yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I know it sounds a bit maybe intense at first,
Right.
but what he's really getting at is, identifying what are your unique skills? What are you naturally good at? What are your strengths?
Mm.
And then figuring out how to leverage those to create value, at scale.
And that idea of productizing yourself, it intrigues me. But could you give us maybe like a concrete example of what that might look like, in practice, especially like you said, in a way that leverages those unique skills?
Yeah. So let's say, you're someone who has a real knack for explaining complex topics in a clear and engaging way.
Okay.
You could productize that skill by creating online courses or writing a book or even, hey, starting a podcast.
Hmm.
Right? You're taking that knowledge, that expertise, packaging it into a product that other people find valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And think about social media influencers who have built these massive audiences, right? By sharing their passion for whether it's fashion, fitness, finance.
Right.
They've turned their interest into, income generating products.
And it makes you realize, with all the tools and platforms available today, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Totally.
And Naval also talks about leverage, right? Being crucial for building wealth.
Yeah.
And I know he doesn't just mean hiring people or getting a loan.
Right. You're right on the money there. So he actually breaks down leverage into three main types: labor leverage, capital leverage, and what he calls media and code leverage.
Okay.
So labor leverage, that's that traditional model of, hiring people to work for you. Capital leverage, that's using other people's money, like loans or investments to grow your wealth. But it's the third type, that media and code leverage,
Right.
which he believes is the most powerful and accessible in today's world.
Uh-huh.
And this is all about using technology,
Yeah.
particularly media platforms and coding skills, to scale your impact, exponentially.
Yeah, that point about media and code leverage really resonates with me because we've seen it firsthand, right? With the rise of YouTubers and podcasters and online educators, they're
100%.
reaching millions of people
Yeah.
with their content, and their costs are minimal because they're leveraging the power of the internet.
Right.
So, are there any specific skills or knowledge areas that you think are particularly well suited to this kind of leverage?
That's a great question. I think any skill that could be digitized, that could be delivered online,
Okay.
has the potential for this kind of leverage. So think writing, teaching, design, coding, music production, even fitness instructor.
Wow.
You name it. I think the key is to really identify what are your unique strengths and how can you package those in a way that can be easily, consumed and shared online.
So it's not just about having a great idea, it's about combining that with the right skills, the right leverage to reach a wider audience.
Exactly.
And then there's this element of luck, which Naval has a kind of a unique take on. He doesn't just dismiss it as pure chance, does he?
Right. He breaks luck down into four distinct categories. So you've got blind luck, which is your, winning the lottery scenario.
Okay.
Then there's luck through persistence, meaning, the more you try, the more likely you are to stumble onto something good.
Right.
But the types of luck he really encourages us to focus on are luck through preparation and luck through reputation.
And this whole concept of like creating your own luck is fascinating. But can we break it down a little bit further? Like, what does it actually look like to cultivate luck through preparation and luck through reputation?
Okay, so luck through preparation is all about, constantly honing your skills, acquiring knowledge, and putting yourself in a position to see those opportunities when they come along. It's about being so good at what you do
Right.
that you become the obvious choice when luck knocks.
Yeah.
Luck through reputation. On the other hand, that's about, building a strong network, cultivating a positive personal brand,
Okay.
becoming known for your expertise and your integrity. And basically, the better your reputation, the more likely you are to have those opportunities, kind of come knocking at your door.
So it's not about sitting around hoping for that lucky break. It's about setting yourself up for success and making yourself a magnet for those serendipitous moments.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. And that ties in too with his advice on making three big life decisions strategically, right? Where to live, who you spend time with, and what career to pursue.
Absolutely. These are decisions that can have a huge impact on, your trajectory in life. And Naval, he encourages us to be really intentional about these decisions. Like, don't just go with the flow. Don't just follow the crowd.
Yeah.
Don't just move to the big city because everyone else is doing it.
Right.
Or take a job just for the prestige or the paycheck. He suggests asking yourself these tough questions like, does this location actually align with my values, with my lifestyle? Do these people, the people I'm surrounding myself with, do they inspire me? Do they challenge me? And does this career path, does it resonate with, my passions and my purpose?
It sounds like he's really advocating for a life that's carefully crafted, not just kind of haphazardly lived.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. He really believes that, by making these big decisions strategically, you can create an environment that really amplifies your strengths,
Right.
supports your growth, and ultimately increases your chances of both success and happiness.
Which is incredibly insightful and empowering because it suggests that we have more control over our destiny than we might realize.
For sure.
But like we touched on earlier, wealth is just one piece of the puzzle for Naval.
Right.
He's equally as passionate about happiness. And that's what we're going to delve into in the next part of our deep dive.
Absolutely. And what I think is so interesting is that he approaches happiness with that same kind of pragmatic, almost scientific approach that he applies to wealth creation.
Very cool.
But we'll save those insights for part 2.
I'm looking forward to it. Welcome back to our deep dive into the wisdom of Naval Ravikant. In part 1, we explored his ideas on building wealth, and I'm already feeling inspired to reevaluate my own approach to, building financial security. But as we touched on Naval's philosophy, it goes way beyond just accumulating wealth. He seems equally, if not more, passionate about happiness, which is something we all crave, right? Regardless of our financial situation.
Absolutely. And what I find so refreshing about Naval's approach is that he doesn't shy away from tackling happiness head on. He doesn't just say, be positive or follow your bliss.
Right.
He actually breaks it down, almost like an equation, and offers these really practical strategies for actually cultivating genuine happiness in our lives.
It's like he's saying happiness is a skill that can be learned and practiced, just like, playing an instrument or coding a website.
Yeah.
That's a very empowering perspective. So what are some of the key elements in Naval's kind of happiness formula?
Well, one of the first things he emphasizes is the importance of letting go of negative emotions. particularly regret and guilt.
Hmm.
We've all been there, right? Replaying past mistakes in our minds, wishing we had done things differently.
Oh, for sure.
But Naval, he argues that dwelling on the past is like a surefire way to sabotage our happiness in the present.
It's so easy to get caught up in that spiral of like what ifs and should haves.
Yeah,
And I can see how that would just keep you stuck in this cycle of negativity. It's almost like you're punishing yourself for something you can't change.
exactly. And he has this great quote. He says, "Regret is a poison you drink, hoping someone else will die."
Wow.
Which is such a powerful image, right? It really
Yeah.
highlights the futility of holding on to those past mistakes.
It makes you realize you're only hurting yourself by kind of clinging to those negative feelings.
Right.
So if letting go of regret is step one, what's the next step in cultivating happiness, according to Naval?
Another key principle he highlights is the importance of living in the present moment.
Okay.
He believes that true happiness isn't found in chasing like those fleeting pleasures or constantly seeking external validation,
Right.
but rather in finding contentment in the here and now.
This idea of being present, it resonates deeply with me.
Yep,
But it's definitely easier said than done.
for sure.
Especially in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with distractions and pressure to achieve, achieve, achieve.
Right.
So any practical tips from Naval on how to actually cultivate this present moment awareness?
Well, he's a big advocate for mindfulness and meditation.
Okay.
He sees those practices as a way to kind of train your mind to focus on the present experience, rather than getting lost in worries about the future
Right.
or regrets about the past. It's about, noticing the sights, the sounds, the sensations around you,
Yeah.
and just being present with them without judgment.
So it's not about emptying your mind completely, but rather about becoming more aware of your thoughts and feelings without getting kind of swept away by them.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some elaborate ritual. Even just taking a few minutes each day to sit quietly and focus on your breath
Yeah.
can make a huge difference. But living in the present, it's not just about mindfulness. It's also about managing your desires.
I have to admit, that one's a bit tougher for me. I'm definitely someone who gets caught up in wanting things, whether it's a new gadget or a promotion at work, or even just like a perfectly organized closet.
Right.
So how does Naval suggest we tackle those pesky desires?
Well, he has this incredibly insightful quote that I think really gets to the heart of it. He says, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want."
Ooh, that's a good one.
It really makes you think, right, about
Mm.
the cost of constantly chasing after things.
Yeah.
Well, like a never-ending treadmill, isn't it? You achieve one goal and immediately another desire pops up in its place.
Right.
So Naval suggests that true happiness comes from controlling those desires, not blindly chasing after them. It's about recognizing that happiness is an internal state,
Okay.
not something that's dependent on external circumstances.
That's a really important distinction, but I imagine it takes like a lot of self-awareness and discipline to really master that skill.
It definitely does, and it's an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. But Neville, he offers some practical tips on how to manage those desires. One of them is to simply become aware of them. Notice when you're feeling that pull of wanting something,
Yeah.
and ask yourself, is this truly something I need? Or is it just a fleeting desire that's likely to leave me unsatisfied, even if I get it?
It's about pausing and questioning those impulses rather than just mindlessly reacting to them.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. What other techniques does Naval recommend for kind of managing those desires and finding that contentment?
He also talks about overcoming envy, which can be a real happiness killer,
Yeah.
especially in today's, social media-driven world.
Oh, totally.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and feeling inadequate when we see those, curated highlight reels.
Oh, the comparison game is definitely a trap I fall into way too often. I find myself scrolling through Instagram and feeling envious of people's like perfect vacations or their seemingly effortless successes, their, perfectly styled homes.
Right.
It's a recipe for just feeling like you're never enough.
In Naval, he offers a really interesting thought experiment to kind of combat this envy. He asks, would you trade everything in your life, your family, your friends, your experiences, to swap places with the person you envy?
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the wisdom of Naval Ravikant. We've been exploring his ideas on wealth creation and happiness, and I'm really struck by how these two concepts, wealth and happiness, aren't really separate at all for him. They seem to be really deeply connected in Naval's philosophy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Naval doesn't see wealth and happiness as like an either-or thing. He really believes that they work best together, like in synergy. And true fulfillment for him comes from using wealth as a tool to, boost your happiness. and create a life that's rich in experiences, not just in money or assets.
Yeah, so it's not about being a millionaire just to be a millionaire, but having that financial freedom to, go after what you're passionate about, spend more time with your loved ones, and give back to causes you care about. Would you say that's kind of what he's getting at?
That's it exactly. Wealth for Novell is really about options. It gives you more possibilities. It can, free you from having to work at a job you don't like, so you can actually design a life that really fits your values and, what you want to do. But without happiness, that freedom can feel, I don't know, empty, meaningless even.
It's like having that amazing house, but never feeling at home when you're in it, right?
Exactly. And, going back to what we were discussing earlier, Novell really emphasizes that happiness is a skill. You can develop it by being intentional and practicing it. It's not about waiting for things to change around you or waiting for that someday when everything falls into place. It's about actually making choices right now to do things you enjoy, being around positive people, and appreciating, the good things you already have.
So it's an ongoing journey, not some destination you arrive at.
Exactly. And that's where that connection between wealth and happiness gets really interesting. When you're at peace and feel content with yourself, you're less likely to be driven by fear or like a sense of scarcity when you're trying to build wealth. You can approach it from a place of abundance and purpose, using your money and resources to actually increase your happiness and do good in the world.
I love that. So it's about making sure your money goals are aligned with your values and using your wealth to make your life and the lives of others better. It's a really inspiring perspective. So for our listeners who might be taking in all this wisdom, what's the one key takeaway they should remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that both wealth and happiness, they're within your reach. They're not just decided by luck or your circumstances. They come from the choices you make and what you do every single day. You have the power to create a life that is both successful and deeply fulfilling.
That's a powerful message. It reminds us that we're not just letting life happen to us. We're actively shaping our own reality. And I think Naval's insights give us a real guide for how to do that well.
Definitely. His whole philosophy is about taking charge of your life, always looking for ways to grow, and always being open to new knowledge and wisdom along the way.
So there you have it, listeners, a deep dive into the brilliant mind of Naval Ravikant. We've talked about his views on wealth, happiness, and how to build a life that has both. It's been such an enlightening conversation, and I hope you got a lot out of it.
I agree, and I'd encourage you to explore Naval's work even more. His book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, is packed with wisdom that can really guide and inspire you on your journey to a richer, happier life.
So until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep diving